You're watching the PIC TV network, channel 1000.
Welcome to the importance and power of reading. I'm Michelle, the computer lady, your host. During some awful dark times in America, Black people were denied the ability to read, to learn how to read, to write, or to even own books. And that has hampered our communities up until this day. Now we're going to have important conversations about the importance and power of reading. Hi, everybody. It's Michelle, the computer lady, and thank you for joining me in this segment in the importance and power of reading. Today I have with me Scott Harrell. He is an amazing man. We met, and he's doing some amazing and great things. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining me today. Oh my God. Can you tell everybody about the things that you do and about your company?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me on today, Michelle. I truly appreciate it. It's been far too long since we've been able to catch up and connect. My name is Scott Harrell. I am the owner and founder of Harrell Consulting Group, business consulting firm that specializes in taking care of the business that gets in the way of entrepreneurs from doing their business, such as business plans, strategy, marketing, business funding for startups, bringing product to market, business expansion, and commercial and residential real estate of varying size and degree, from hundreds of thousands of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars. We aim to be the bridge to your business tomorrow.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. So you're diverse and multifaceted, and your company does a lot to help businesses. That is absolutely awesome. So, Scott, let me ask you a couple of questions. Now, did you like reading as a child? And if not, did you struggle?
When I first started reading, I found it fun, but the struggle came quick, and I began to shy away from reading. I did not know until my adult life I have dyslexia. So for me, reading, when it all began with a lot of the books which were more picture oriented than words, I love that, and I could easily interpret the story that way. But when books became much more word focused, word heavy, it became a struggle. It became a struggle, and I began to shy away from reading and such, because it took me so much longer to read than just about anybody else around me.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So, how were you able to overcome uh, this challenge? We're not even going to call it a problem, but a challenge.
So a couple of things I had to look at. One, I had to understand myself for where I was. It wasn't necessarily a handicap or me being damaged or broken. It was the fact that if I needed to read something, I needed more time and I needed more focus. And that's just the way it was, number one. Number two, I still had a very creative mind and a love for stories, and I love to create. And number three, there were still stories out there that did have pictures to them, did have some animation to them. And there was nothing wrong for me to gravitate to those. So putting all three of those things together, I didn't look at it as that was putting me in a pigeonhole as to the kind of reader I was or how I would move forward. This is how I functioned well for me, to be able to interpret the world around me through reading, and also be able to produce things that could be read.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. So now, who were your major influences in your reading journey? Was it your mom, your dad, your aunt, grandma, maybe? Or did you have a mentor?
So I remember my mother and my grandmother reading to me at night. I remember the first story that was shared to me as a child in book form was Goodnight Moon. And I remember reading that to my children when they were little. And as I look back, um, I was thought of as so intelligent because I seemed to memorize the story and could repeat it back so quickly. But it's images. And for dyslexics, imagery is very, very big, very big. And we can interpret a story very quickly that way. However, um, as I began to grow up, and one of my major influences was my grandfather. Now, he didn't excel in high school. He didn't go to college, but he worked hard and he was self-taught. And anything he didn't know, he took the time he needed to study it the way he needed so he could do what he needed to do. Whether or not it was teaching Sunday school or learning how to change the brakes on his own car or building the addition onto the back of his own house, he learned what he needed to do at his pace and then went and did it.
That is absolute. What a great story. That is absolutely amazing. So now, what are your favorite? What was your favorite book as a child? Because you talked about Harvest Moon. Was that your favorite book, or did you have other favorite books?
There were some others that stood out, but it when I was thinking about when I think about that question, it's not so much favorite books, because it, it's more stories. Um, there's a story I remember, it was in middle school, that stays with me to this day, called Flowers for Algernon. And it's a story, I think it's one of the first stories that really stood out and ingrained itself in my mind. I carry it with me to this day. It was a short story we had to read in class, and it was about a individual who had a low IQ, very low IQ, but through a pharmaceutical breakthrough was able to triple his IQ. And they were doing the test on him and they were doing a test on a mouse at the same time. And they found that over time, the mouse not only lost his intelligence, but died. So he knew that was coming to him as well. But in the course of the story, he got to see the world in a different light for a period of time, how people treated him because of how they saw his low IQ, how people treated him because of his high IQ, and how he interacted in that world. Um, and for me, one of the most powerful things about stories and why I like to write short stories and poetry is how it changes perspectives, how it can show you something from a different place than when you started, when you opened up the first page. So it made me look at some of my classmates around me, because we're in middle school, everybody picks on each other, and it gave me pause. It gave me pause to think about what if. And that's what one of the reasons why that story stayed with me.
Wow, that is absolutely great. So, what is your favorite book or your favorite stories as an adult, and what are you reading now?
So one of the things that I found myself reading now, it's called Master Key Mindset. It's by, and I had the author's name here, but I had to reboot my computer. It's about 100 years old. I believe the author's last name is Hannell. Um, and it is a book that helps self-discovery, self-actualization, and allows yourself to tap into the different areas of life, different areas of self, and grow more discipline as to how you engage the world mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Um, I'm doing a lot of books right now that are all keen on that line to, how can I say, not just knowledge for knowledge's sake, but ammunition, fuel that I can use within this vessel to make me more effective.
Well, that is absolutely amazing. And I can tell you myself because I've listened to you do spoken word and to be a speaker, and you are absolutely amazing. And I would not have known that you had any challenges.
Oh, well,
So
thank you for that. Thank you.
now you have children, right?
I do.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So do you think that it's important for us to have books in our home for children to access in order for them to be better readers?
I do, with a caveat to that, because a lot of parents, a lot of adults think you have books in your house, you have a library of books in your house, and your children will become better readers. I disagree with that. It's not about the possession, it's about the use. And not only promoting the use of the book, but then the discussion, the understanding. Because, in my opinion, um, where the lack is it's not just trying to get a kid to go read a book, but then delving into the understanding. What did you get from that? Let's discuss. Let's debate. Let's see what it is, where you stand now from where you began that book. So for me, is it critical to have books in the house? Absolutely, especially turning pages as opposed to scrolling on a phone or an iPad. Maybe I'm a little old fashioned, but there's something to be said when you do the work, not only with your hands in the dirt and physical, but with your mind as well.
Wow, I totally agree with that. Now, on that point, we've got to take a small commercial break, and we're going to be right back with my guest, Scott Harrell. Stay tuned.
Hello, Scott Harrell, owner of Harrell Consulting Group, the business consulting firm that is taking care of so many businesses during trying times such as these. There are so many minority and black-owned businesses that are teetering on the edge of extinction because of this pandemic. We at Harrell Consulting Group specialize in coming up with new and innovative approaches to aid these businesses so that they not only survive, but thrive during this pandemic. Please contact us today at www.harrellconsultinggroup.com and download your free pandemic emergency business plan so that we can be the bridge to your business tomorrow.
Since 1877, Jackson State University has been training students for a life of service and leadership to impact our global society. Ranked among the best HBCUs in the country, Jackson State University offers 47 undergraduate, 37 master's, 1 specialist, and 13 doctoral degree programs. Whether you're interested in the arts, education, public health, the sciences, or business, we're here to take you from ready to JSU ready. Visit jsums.edu and apply today.
Hey, everybody, we're back. I'm Michelle, the Computer Lady. We're having a rousing discussion on the importance and power of reading with my wonderful guest, Mr. Scott Harrell. Scott, thank you so much for joining me. Now, as a professional, how has reading shaped your career or helped you in your life?
Reading has been foundational in a very concrete way, 2 concrete ways, as a matter of fact. Now, my background, I was in law enforcement for 5 years prior to retirement due to injury. I was in private security for almost 20 years. And in doing so, I was in charge of investigations, HR, and things like that. So on that side, reading is where the concreteness of life is. If I'm telling someone they broke the law, I have to have what that law is in front of me because it's in black and white what happened. If you violated a company rule or policy, it's right there. These are the things that you live by, you prosecute by, you operate by, and that are fundamental to the function of your office. Now, now the other side of where reading has impacted me professionally uh, is within the confines of perspectives, being able to see things from different angles, um, different thought processes. And it's good to be able to be in a place where you can read either someone's reports or someone's narrative or other books and such, and be able to take in more than just where you stand, because that then widens the field as to how you can approach life. So those are the 2 fundamental ways I would say professionally reading has impacted me.
Wow. And so, with all the things you do, reading is critical. With all the things you've done, reading is critical. And these are the things when we engage that we want to help parents and teachers and anyone that's watching that understands how reading is so impactful, so important to your life and the power that it possesses. So, Scott, I'm going to ask you this question, and you may or may not have a comment on it, but what do you think the state of literacy is with reading and comprehension for our children and adolescents right now here in the United States?
I am extremely concerned. I am extremely concerned. And here is why. I don't feel we have a lot. It's not the issue that I feel we have a lot of illiterate children and students. The issue at hand, reading is more than just regurgitation. I remember going to school and being able to pick out the kid who got a bad grade or was getting chewed out by the teacher because the report he did was Cliff Note style. He picked up the Cliff Notes, or he just skimmed and got the important points, and that's where he wrote the report from without diving all the way through. And the teacher may make an example out of him and bring him up and say, tell us this, tell us that, tell us this. For me, I think we are becoming very much a Cliff Note society, where instead of actually digging, reading, diving, digesting, we're having opinions and facts and thoughts handed to us without any form of debate, discussion, or deliberation. Some of the most fun times I remember in school is not the reading part, but then the discussion after. And for me, that's really the crux of reading is the road you're driving on. The destination is the thought. And we are moving away from critical thinking in such a dangerous way that I am very nervous about, not only this generation, but generations to come, where instead of critical thought, it's literally things that are just being handed to you that are snippets of information that someone else is thinking. So to answer your question, I am very concerned. I am concerned to the point where I don't know how far we are away from young people not understanding how to find truth, how to find source, and what to do with it when they get it.
Wow, that's very poignant because I think the same thing. And as you know, I'm an author and I'm a writer, and I write to young people along these genres because I know and I see it for myself. I have grandchildren and great grandchildren, and the first thing they want to do is, oh, I'm going to ask Google, what about researching yourself? What about thinking on the back end of how these things operate or how this works or how this is put together instead of just asking Google? Because we know that even if you ask Google, you still have to read it. And there's more to it. Because what if the information is incorrect? You have to do those deep dives. So now, my other question is, do you have any boys? Do you have boys and girls, or just girls or boys?
I have 3 boys.
Okay. So as a father of boys, and what I see as an educator is that boys a lot of times have a hard time quieting their minds. How can we get them to get still and to not only read more, to read better, and to pick up that thirst for knowledge, that thirst for learning, that thirst for exploration through the reading journey?
So here's what I would say to you and to any parent out there, and it's worked for me for my boys, in my opinion. That and 2 out of 3 also have dyslexia, and there are some struggles with reading. But when it comes to who they are, don't fight against the current. Use it to your advantage. What do I mean by that? Well, one of my favorite commercials that I saw recently was this little girl who asked her father. He was working. She was supposedly doing some school report. She said, "Dad, how big is the ocean?" He put his phone down and had her put her pencil down, put her in the car, and they drove to the beach. For my kids, if they have a question, if they have something, I want them to physically dive into it. I want them to immerse themselves into it. I want them to bounce, knock themselves off the walls a little bit, trying to figure it out and feel it, because um, that is part of discovery. And when you do that part of discovery, you're owning your discovery. You're holding on to it. I remember the days, at least I'm old enough to remember the days um, when you're in science class and you get the project right, and either the little flame, or you built, or you created a crystal, or whatever it was, and you're proud. That was yours. So for me, that's a key thing, getting them actually involved in the process of the discovery, of the research, which then in turn will make them want to read so they can understand what they're doing, as opposed to it being fast food handed to them on their phone.
That is amazing. So parents, just to sum it up for you for a second, is he's telling you to have these activities that correspond with the learning. Once you do that and they immerse themselves, they're going to gravitate to wanting to learn more, wanting to understand the world around them. Is that about correct, Mr. Harrell?
Absolutely. I'll give you a perfect example. My youngest son, Aaron, loves butterflies. Wanted to learn about butterflies. Okay. Do I tell him to pull up butterflies on his phone? Or do we actually plant milkweed outside and raise some butterflies in the house from the chrysalis, from the caterpillar to chrysalis, to the point where he was now eager to get books, and he can identify every type of butterfly there is on site by color, shape, and dimension. That's his.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for that. Now we've got to take another quick commercial break, and we're going to be right back with Scott Harrell, and he's giving us some amazing information on how to keep our kids engaged in the reading journey. We'll be right back.
The best gift we may give our children is a legacy of wealth. Teaching them about entrepreneurship is a great start. Here's a fun new free ebook to help with that part. Get it right now at tmrcus.com. Read it together to make a good spark.
Are you a company, business, or service that believes in social responsibility? Would you like to make a positive impact? You can. You can sponsor this program and be seen by 2 million viewers on the PIC TV network. Call 770-367-1268 for more information today.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Michelle, the Computer Lady, and I have an amazing guest, Scott Harrell, and he's been giving us some wonderful, amazing concepts to help kids, even if they struggle reading. His blueprint has been astronomical. Scott, oh my God, I am so excited and so pleased that you decided to do this interview with me, and all the caveats that you're giving us are absolutely amazing. So, what guidance now would you offer parents of both boys and girls to help make sure that they comprehend as well as read well?
So, boys and girls, the most important thing when it comes to reading, whatever it is they're reading, take time to discuss and debate with them whatever it is they're reading, because it does two things. One, you can achieve understanding of comprehension, because whatever it is they're reading, and that means you have to take the time to understand what they're reading as well. Okay, you can't just pawn it off on Google or the phone or whatever, or the teacher. Um, you then in turn can debate, discuss, and understand where they're, not only where they stand in what they're reading, but possibly even pick up on if there is a misunderstanding. You know, where it is that they may have a disconnect, in the course of what it is. You have to connect with them. You have to connect with them. And in doing that, you do connect with them. And that also is important because children see what is important to you is important to them. And the thing that you think you're showing that, oh, their reading is important to you, so you then in turn, you're thinking that they're going to think reading is important. No, it's the fact that you're spending time with them. So they then in turn are going to spend that time with you in that.
And that's what's critical, because when we have those discussions, when we have those debates, when we have that going back and forth, what it allows the kids to do is they bond with you. They bond more tightly, and you create these awesome memories that they're never going to forget. Oh, Dad, do you remember when I wanted to look up butterflies and we got this book and we planted milkweed and all these wonderful things, and then we saw a butterfly actually go through its growth process. And then I started to be able to learn about butterflies, and you got me all these books, and I started to learn them on my own. I remember that, and I cherish that to this day. And that's why reading to your kids, having this discussions, having debates, and having the freedom to go back and forth is so important on the reading journey. Now, you talked about butterflies, and the science of butterflies is science. And this segues into our next question, which is about STEM: science, technology, engineering, and math. You know that that's not going anywhere. We're in the digital age. It's here to stay. How do we get our kids more interested in STEM? What are some of the things that we can do in order for the lights to turn on about all the things that we already have around us that involves them, and how we can help them learn it and elevate our communities with it?
You know, there are a lot of very high level answers and responses people could give. I think it's a little bit more simpler, and I'm going to pull from here. I think as parents, we need to go one more step than we do with our kids when they're looking at something and say to them, how could you make that? How could you do that? Can you tell me? Once again, it goes back to them hearing us believe in them, but then causing them to think. We as parents have unfortunately moved from a place where we're causing children to think and giving children solutions. I remember growing up, and my parents' favorite saying to me was, figure it out. And unfortunately, we're not sparking that figure it out. You know, our kids who see a game, how many parents have said to them, you think you can build one of those? You want a game console. Do you think you can build one of those? How would you build it? If that's the thing that, what is that missing that would make that perfect for you? And how would you build that? We tend to be, either critical of what they're doing or disengaged. And I know that's a very blanket statement. I'm not trying to criticize every single parent. And I apologize if I am. But I want to point out the area where I feel where we're largely missing the boat, in that engagement and challenge lets a child know you believe in them enough that they could do it if they had the tools. And if they then hear that, they will want to look for the tools. And where do they find those tools? STEM. So I see you. My middle son loves football, and he's a great debater. He is between being a first round draft pick for the Giants or a lawyer. And I tell him, you can do both. You can absolutely do both. But I look at him, and as I see him do things, I ask him, how would you do that better? How would you make this work for you better? Talk to me about it, and what would you need to do that? And it is within that paradigm that they then in turn have to look within themselves and look within the tools that are provided, as opposed to, once again, the phone, to see how they can get from here to there.
Wow, that's an adept answer, and it's thought provoking because now, parents, you have something to work with here. Are you challenging your children? Are you challenging them to think beyond just the rudimentary, just beyond regurgitation? So thank you so much for that, Scott.
Yeah.
Now, last questions. As a parent, how did you make sure that your children comprehended, read well, and also give parents out there 3 or 4 suggestions on how they can help their children?
So how did I make sure my children comprehended and read well? I argued with them. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you have a reading assignment and it's on this or it's on that, or but even if it, and I'm just going to be very simple here, even if it's on Goodnight Moon. Okay, well, I really didn't see the moon in that, son. It seemed like a story more about, I don't know, the daytime, and you begin to debate with them and let them defend what they remember, what they read, and that tells you their comprehension. Um, it also gives them a point of, once again, engagement with you and seeing your interest in them. And, there's a certain natural level of children wanting to intellectually spar with their parents to show growth. Okay. And this is a healthy way to do it without having to get to the point of, oh, I hate you and you run my life and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. No, these are the point. I remember listening to my middle son when he was 11 or 12, having a debate with his friends that he actually exited from because he knew he was talking above their heads about abortion. And not just about abortion, but about the laws and where the Supreme Court was going. And this is several years back because he's 16 going on 17 now. And to know that the conversations we have prepare them to have conversations outside the house where they can critically think is beautiful, and that's where it stems from. A few things to offer the parents, as you said towards the end of your question. Your engagement and interest in them shows a child how interesting they should be to their own self. If they're not interesting to you, why should they care about themselves? Not trying to be too heavy, but I'm being very, 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 yeah. Number two, if they know that you are interested in them and that there is something worth being interested in within themselves, they in turn will want to discover it, define it, and use it, and grow it and nurture it. And as you continue your interest in interaction and connection with them, you inspire them by letting them know what's in them. It's bigger than they realize. So hold my hand as I walk you down this journey to introduce you to yourself. And that is the part, that journey of reading, the journey of education, the journey of getting to know themselves, which is what this is all about. So those are just
Wow.
thoughts that I would offer.
Those were amazing points. Everybody, I want to take this time, number one, to thank you, Scott. You have blessed my program. You have blessed this community and parents out there. I'm hoping this has been a blessing to you and your children. If you need to, rewind it, play it back, and watch it over and over again, because Scott has given you not only from challenges, he's giving us triumph. How to engage with our kids, how to make them better readers, how to have those discussions that he called it arguing, I call it debating, but it allows a child to grow. And that's what's so important. Thank you so much, Scott, for being on my program today. Thank you. Thank you, and thank you again.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for having me. And, I truly appreciate you, Michelle, and all that you do.
Thank you so much. So, everybody, now you have some keys from Mr. Scott Harrell on some of the things that you can do to help engage children, especially children that are having difficulties with reading. Thank you so much for joining me for this segment of The Importance and Power of Reading, and we'll see you real soon.
You know what's going on in our society, book banning, and over 38 million children don't have books in their homes. Join me for some exciting segments as we talk about the importance and power of reading with my guest, Pastor Jeff Moffitt, on the PIC TV network, Channel 1000.